Okay, hello everyone. Welcome back to Pixel Perfect Marathon number 2. I hope you are now back on your seats after that close Metal Gear Solid race. So right now we are going to have, I hope I can pronounce this right, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Shredder's Revenge Arcade OK difficulty run by ateatree. So take it away.
Hello, everyone. Thank you very much for that, Jonathan Irvings. Please, a round of applause again for that last run. That was an incredibly close race from two very talented runners. This one is not going to be a race, but we're going to be chasing a couple of old friends, Rocksteady Bebop, Krang, and maybe some other people across all of New York City to help save the day. And thanks to overwhelming support from the Twitch chat, it looks like we're going to be running as Donatello for this one. So thank you for being involved and hope you enjoy the run. As someone in Twitch chat said, big stick, big advantage. So we'll see if that bears out. We're going to be playing on the arcade mode, which basically means that we cut out like the story, some of the cutscenes. We don't have to move in the party van between the levels, which is good and bad. It's always nice to see the party van, which we will at one or two occasions, but it also means that we start with our full move set, including the several different supers that we'll be using throughout the run. But it also means that we can only stock one bar of super meter or ninja meter as we go. The OK difficulty is the default difficulty for the game. The main thing between that and gnarly is that on gnarly, enemies are a little bit more aggressive, which changes some of the routing, and bosses all have double health. So we can't do some of the bosses quite as quickly as we normally would. So in the interest of not having to do that, we're going to stick with OK for today. Since we already have our character choice, we'll proceed right on ahead. A time will start when the 1P icon appears above Donatello's head. So we'll get an opening cutscene, we'll get the opening title card for level 1, Donatello will run in on screen, and then time will start shortly afterwards when the player icon appears above his head. Let's get to it. You can see from the off here that they do a great job of evoking Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, or depending on where you're from, when you're hearing the sound of my voice, it might have been Teenage Mutant Hero Turtles for you. But time is started, and we are off on our way. So Donatello's main character traits, as were mentioned in Twitch chat, he has that long reach from the stick, from the bow staff, if you want to be particular about it. He also has the slowest normals in the game, which means in some cases we need to be a little bit careful about how we approach new groups of enemies, because it's entirely possible they will get to start attacking before we do if we're not careful. But with careful positioning, we should be able to, as you saw there, just handle groups of enemies as they come in. That's kind of one of the main tenets of beat 'em ups, knowing exactly where enemies are going to spawn in, knowing what to do to handle them. In the meantime, we're just enjoying the amazing sights and sounds of the game. The soundtrack from T. Lopes, he of Sonic Mania fame. The people at Tribute Games and everyone they got involved in this project clearly loved the source material, and it really shows through here. If you watch the 80s show, or even any of the newer versions that are kind of based on that follow a lot of the aesthetic choices that series made, this will feel right at home for you. So Donnie having that standing super that kind of creates that big sphere around him, he can take certain screens. He and Casey actually share that trait. So he can take certain screens a little bit differently than other characters would. So like on that 2 screens ago, you saw I basically just waited a moment, stood there, and let everybody come to me. Which is always nice to be able to do that. These enemies, ideally, we'd be able to hit them before they touch the ground, but Donnie doesn't quite have the move set to handle that, or at least if there's a way that he does it, I'm not quite familiar with it. So we take things a little, there we go. Able to get the elbow strike, and that's the kind of move I was, nice, 2 in a row. Certain enemies, and they actually changed this after the very first patch of the game. What they did was they changed how and when enemies spawn in, as opposed to basically having to drag them from off screen into their spawn area. They actually, as soon as you scroll the screen over and certain other enemies are defeated, the enemy will exist there. So we were able to attack some of the enemies from off the edge of the screen. Here's Bebop taking over Channel 6 News with his pirate broadcast and ripping off his shirt in very 90s reminiscent WWE style, but we're going to put an end to his broadcast for today. If we don't whiff that, too bad. That was not the super I was looking for. For most bosses, the one we'll use frequently is the jumping super, which causes you to do 10 damage to any enemies in range and has a very nice wide area of effect. Like north and south, it's actually quite narrow, but east and west of your character, it can hit lots of different enemies. So we'll use that for zone clears. We'll use it for maximum damage on most bosses, especially since Donatello doesn't have a super that does more than 10 damage. Actually, I think the standing might do 4 hits of 3, so it can do 12 if you hit with everything. But yes, absolutely, I type slow. Like the little touches, the if you saw at the very beginning of that last stage when you saw the foot soldiers working in the office, one of them actually didn't even have a keyboard at his desk. It was basically playing the role of the intern. Other little touches here that you're seeing, the what they call the mode 7 throw. If an enemy is below a certain health threshold, you can actually just throw them right at the screen. Some enemies will resist you if they're either certain types of enemies or they have too much health. That was the the power pizza, which basically puts me into a spinning state for about 5 seconds. And as I spin, I'm constantly doing 1 damage to anything that makes contact with me. Speaking of damage to anything that makes contact with me, Donnie's slightly slower normals caught me a bit off guard, and I took that manhole cover right to the face, which is less than ideal, but able to slide on through here. Since I don't have a super charged up just yet, we'll take this at a slightly different pace. Want to make sure I'm at the bottom corner here because Donnie is one of the slower characters, so to make sure that he was in the right position there to take out those Mousers, I had to make sure he was all the way at the bottom. Avoid a little bit of New York traffic. So you've seen a couple of different enemy types at this point. These are a new type, the ranged enemies. They have 2 health instead of the standard 4. And they're actually throwing, as you might have seen at the very beginning of this level, they're throwing tire jacks. They will continue to do so throughout the entirety of the game because I guess they couldn't afford new equipment. After the 1 or 2 at the beginning of this level used their jacks to disable the party van. But you know, it continues to work. It's a family-friendly weapon choice. We used our standing super there to knock as many foot soldiers off of their bikes as possible. Thankfully, any enemies that are on bikes only have 1 additional hit point after you knock them off. In a similar vein, any enemy that is holding something only has 2 health. Kind of helps even things out. You know, they have more offensive options, but as a result, they have a little bit less HP. Definitely don't want to hit that. We are saving that pizza for later. We'll reverse set this up. We let him get over to the left so we can make sure to pick up this superpower pizza a little bit late. This gives us infinite super meter for 10 seconds, and we as a change as of this latest patch, we actually carry this over into the boss fight because you can see that that 3 just stays above our head, and it lets us do this. Yeah, so Rocksteady can try again later, I guess. But yeah, that's a change as of this latest patch. Before then, those super meter pizzas did not persist through cutscenes, so there wasn't really a point to doing that. But the routing has changed such that a couple of bosses will fall victim to something similar to that throughout this run. Off onto level 3. This is our first auto scroller, and each auto scroller gets a song with lyrics. Did I turn the game audio up very slightly from what they told me to so you could enjoy this song better? I might have. New enemies for this level are these fleas that come along with us. They have only 1 HP, but in the interest of getting the screen to scroll just as quickly as possible, you do want to take them out as soon as they get on the screen, because if you don't, they will fly around in kind of parabolic patterns, and it's real annoying to have to go track them down. So we just don't do that. Our goal here is to finish this screen with our super meter up, which we did. Don't want to hit any of those. Stage hazards, like the barriers and like the road cones will be used to our advantage in many stages, as you might have seen just earlier, but they can also be used against us. And in this auto scroller stage, any time we hit one of those road hazards, the next screen can't start scrolling across until it's finished, like it's settled down and finished its animation. So basically, we don't want to hit any cones or anything like that in this stage if we can help it. This is technically the boss of this stage, and in that you can see its patterns, see what it does, and get a little bit of practice on making sure you don't click your model into it, because if you touch the van there, you will take damage. You'll get knocked away. So thankfully, we didn't have that happen just now, but we get another more important chance at it later at the end of this stage. Making sure to use my standing super here, take care of that whole set, because they come at very slightly different heights. So otherwise you would have to angle your kicks very, very carefully to try to make sure you got all of them without letting them get fly around too much. Thankfully, we don't have to worry about that because we are Donatello. Let the foot soldiers take care of each other. They really shouldn't be driving. I don't think any of them have their licenses. New enemy type, the flying mechs. Don't have a ton of health, but they usually come in with other enemies like this, and they have a little minigun on the front of their turret vehicle. So ideally, we won't see that very many times at all in this run. Go to a specific spot here. 1, 2, not quite. That's okay. Showing off the size of that jumping super. And because they've gotten a little bit away from each other, we're going to use the other property of the standing super, which is that it has a mild vacuum property. So we were able to suck everyone in towards us and take care of them with a single attack. All right, now it is time. This is probably a lot of people's like second least favorite boss casually. But if we stick to a script, if we get it right at the top here, we should get a pretty reliable pattern. This is what we want to see to start with. So as long as I don't mess anything up too much. That was close. Yeah, we'll super through this. And finish them off before they get to speed around the screen. Very good. Just like we drew it up. Yeah, when you see them lean out the window and laugh at you, it means they're about to basically put the brakes on the car and start spinning around. They'll basically bounce back and forth like a pinball for 5 or 10 seconds. You can technically hit them, but by and large, it's just time loss. So nice to not have to see that. Play a little video games and build up our ninja bar. Everyone has a unique taunt. Donnie's is one of the slowest, but he gets to play some Game Boy, so I can't complain too much. I would do the same. Let's see if we can lure these back up into the... Nope, not quite what we wanted. We wanted to use that traffic meter to do basically the same thing we're about to do with this fire hydrant here. There we go. Absolutely. A turtle after the heart of everyone who is playing and watching right now, I imagine. And that includes me. Get off a little bit of extra damage on this axe soldier. The axe soldiers have a total of 10 HP. So they're often taken care of using super attacks, because super attacks do 10 HP basically on average. Like aside from the outliers, super attacks do 10 damage. But in a situation like that where we were waiting for an additional enemy to spawn, we just went ahead and took him down normally. Hit that manhole cover a little bit early. That actually should have taken care of 1 or 2 more enemies out of this, but take care of this wave nice and early, including our archers here, who only have 1 HP each. So the main thing that archers keep us from doing is scrolling the screen faster, but we'll approach them as we can in most cases to get them off the screen in a reasonable time. Hit that first barrel, take care of the first wave of roadkill Rodneys. Our archer actually took care of the second one for us, so we thank him for accidentally team killing. Our shield soldiers here have 2 HP. Yeah, the longest taunt in the game. That'll get you. I was trying to actually not scroll the screen before starting that taunt, but that's okay. The monkeys are delightful to look at. They're great sprites, but those bananas are a real nuisance. They don't do a lot of damage, but they do have a hard knockdown property on whoever they hit. So that can be you, that can be your enemies. They do not discriminate. Yeah, we won't get all four. That's okay. If we run all the way onto this screen, everybody spawns in exactly the same position there, which is nice. We'll go ahead and use the right. I often forget that the vacuum property has a very slight edge where enemies that will try to run away from you off screen won't be pulled in. So you saw that property there. The archers basically just said no. Got a little bait and switch here. It's not time to fight Rocksteady and Bebop again just yet. Now it's time for some deep cuts. Ground Chuck and Dirtbag. Get our kind of standard setup here. Watch out for which one of them is gonna... Neither of them got an attack off. How unusual. All right, we got an attack pattern here instead of the runaway. So that lets us pile on some more damage. Ah, so close. All right, we'll run Dirtbag over here. And that'll be the end of that fight. Almost like we set it up. Dirtbag slipped the net just one more time than we wanted him to. When he gets underground, what'll happen is he'll either, if he senses a player close to him, he'll go up to them and pop his shovel out up to 3 times. But if you go far enough away, he'll only chase after you once. I should not have kept that cutscene up. It's a little earlier than I normally run here, folks. Bear with me. I've got my breakfast. I've got my caffeine, so don't forget to stay hydrated, by the by. New enemies here. We got our kunai throwers in pink. They have a total of 3 health each. And like I mentioned earlier, the any enemies that are carrying something have 2 health. So as opposed to this guy who has 4, the ones carrying the trash cans only had 2. Ah, we tried to keep them from falling into the subway train because that's a space where you can't really follow. We would have liked to have gotten enemies defeated before they got there and kept the trains coming along, but see if we can use the vacuum property there. Yeah, got everybody defeated before they landed on the train tracks. You see them bouncing around down there, but since they're already defeated, then that takes care of itself. Use the explosive barrels there to skip past that screen. And now it's time for everyone's favorite, the Mousers. The Mousers were actually in very little in comics or the 80s cartoon series. They were in like a handful of episodes at most, but they're just such perfect video game enemies that they showed up in virtually all of the NES and SNES games. And that's, if you remember them at all, that's probably where you remember them from. Another setup here shows off the height of that sphere of AoE range. You're able to get the enemies coming out of that sewer pipe in addition to everything else. There we go. Come at the enemy spawn with that elbow. The elbow stops Donnie right at the end of its range and also does 2 damage. Wasn't quite able to get a super up in time. That's okay. The big Mama Mouser did not try to bite at us, which is what it usually tries to do as soon as it comes on screen. So I'm grateful that that didn't happen for either of those, actually. Would have liked to have gotten more bounces off of those little ones. Yeah, the other thing it can do, as you're seeing there, is put out little baby Mousers. And that can actually change, like you'll see, hopefully you won't see, but on the next screen here, certain enemies basically spawn checking on how few enemies there are on the screen total. So having enemies spawning other enemies can really mess up some patterns. That didn't go quite as much as we would have liked. It didn't go super clean because they jumped apart from each other rather than together, but that's okay. We waited for them to get a little bit closer and took care of them. This is the Rat King. This is people's least favorite boss casually. I'm going to take this a little bit carefully, knowing that I'm currently playing as the character with the longest taunt in the game. Because the thing about the Rat King is once he's taken enough damage, he will jump up onto his the ruins of his bike from Turtles in Time, and then he will summon a lot of rats. So they did technically change how often he jumps up, but on balance, it's basically the same. If you do too much damage to him with normal attacks, he will jump away a lot more often, especially as his health gets lower. So the fact that he only did that once, we only had to see one wave of rats, not the absolute fastest way you could do that fight, but definitely the most consistent. As all good 90s dudes have to do, it's time to take a trip to the mall. If we had Mikey with us, we'd hear him say, "Whoa, dudes, the mall! Man, we have to go to the arcade." Again, just one of those little touches they added to this game to really seal the deal of 90s aesthetic. To say nothing of the totally radical mats and carpets here in the mall. Reminds me of those classic drink cups, if you know the style that I'm talking about. Did not mean to leave this guy with 1 HP, but thankfully some enemies will actually go along screen transitions with you, so that worked out okay. Misspaced that jump a little bit. Would like to get some... no, we took a hit. All right. We'll let him do his thing over in the corner. Thankfully, he did not spawn on top of us, as they are sometimes wont to do. We'll have many more chances to see that throughout the stage, so look forward to that. Me just getting landed on by one of those fellas. Unlucky jump, but that's okay. Burst through our barricades and into the next section of the mall. Yes, the foot soldiers are going shopping. No, I don't know what they could possibly be getting. New enemy, the mace soldiers. They have a total of 4 health, but if they are not walking up to somewhere or in a knockdown state, they will be swinging that mace around, and anything it does takes priority over basically anything you do. Kind of situation there, as you might have seen, where I tried to jump kind of equidistant to those 3 kunai soldiers, but the game actually basically tries to gently magnetize you to the enemy it thinks is nearest you. So in a lot of cases, if you're too close to certain enemies, instead of hitting all 3 of them or everybody in a group, it'll move you towards an enemy and you'll miss some as a result. So that's what just happened there. We try to avoid that throughout the run. These, the mechs have a total of 12 health, which is why the super isn't enough to finish them off, but it's definitely the safest way to start. Ideally, we want to, as Donnie, we want to hit them with the diving to start, and then a rising kick, because Donatello's rising kick does 2 damage. The diving kick actually only does 1, although it technically does 2 hits of 1 damage. So if you can hit them with both hits of that, it'll work, but I always forget that sliding kick has a knockdown that some other characters don't have. So for the second one here, we'll just do the elbow strike instead. Speaking of deep cuts, if you thought Ground Chuck and Dirtbag were unusual characters, or you didn't remember them, this is Tempestra from Season 7 of the 80s show that actually took place in the 90s. It was basically a PSA against playing too many video games, because Leonardo doesn't believe that video games are dangerous until a character in his video game comes to life when the cartridge gets struck by lightning. We also have a cameo from Taka and Razor from Secret of the Ooze, the second TMNT movie. Weren't supposed to see them for too long, but always good to get a chance to see our friends. And finish her before too long. Take a nice little hydration break while I get the chance. Unfortunately, someone got to Krang's body while we were busy celebrating. That's well, I mean, you got to celebrate. It's just you know, it's a brawler thing to do. It's a 90s kid thing to do, but I just wish we'd been willing to cut it a little bit short. New enemy type the pikemen. They have 2 health and are basically in an attack state whenever they're running. So you do want to avoid the front end of that thing, because much like the mace enemies, they take precedence over anything we do. It is an entirely valid way to take care of enemies on this particular stage to knock them off of the screen. We'll slide under these. Positioning wasn't quite right. Would have been nice to take out all 4 of those. Nope, not quite enough time. Yeah, now you can see what happens if you're not in that sliding state when you run into pike enemies. That attack is basically the second fastest in the game, I would say. We knocked an enemy up and used the antenna to hit him as he came back down, which is always nice. 1, 2. Nah, slow normals got me again. There's basically a count you can do with those. See if we can get it here. Yeah, there we go. And finish the other off at roughly the same time. Yeah, ideally you want to knock all those enemies right back into the pit where they came from. Do a little slide to take care of both of these. Grab that a little bit early. That's okay, don't tell anyone. As long as we have one super saved up, it shouldn't be a big deal. Yeah. Take care of this one, and then we'll use a single standing super to take care of this screen. And that's basically when that pizza is supposed to wear off anyway, so. We're not going to get our swag sushi today. For whatever reason, that control panel has an entire bento box of sushi inside. Not hygienic, but certainly delicious. New enemy, the katana soldiers. As soon as they are set up and in their place, as in not jumping in or anything like that, they will put up their guard and do a counter attack against you if you run into them from the front. So we're going to try to not do that whenever we get the chance. As you saw there, if an enemy is bouncing but not yet on the ground, there's still technically a valid hitbox. So much like you can bounce them up in the air, like you're seeing with the elbow as a setup, if you just bounce them off the ground and like slide into them later, that still counts. You can keep hitting them. So we will definitely take things like that if we accidentally knock an enemy away too early, or if any other weird shenanigans happen. But if an enemy gets all the way to the ground, then they can't be hit again until they get up. So we do try to avoid that wherever possible. Now it's time for Rocksteady and Bebop. We brought along a little traffic cone to see if maybe they will knock themselves into it when we get the chance, as these two do run themselves all over the screen in addition to doing attacks from their own individual boss fights. Always fun when they both have their guns out here. See which areas of the screen are still safe. Was able to get the double hit on them with that jumping super. So that's always nice. You'll love to get free damage on somebody. Ideally would like to build up the super. That's okay. We'll use the cone to finish them off. Very good. Thank you for your help, Traffic Cone. On to our second auto-scroller, where we are now flying through the skies of Manhattan. Second song with vocals. Feel free to sing along if you know the words, or just throw up your jam emotes in chat. I like that it's basically the same board from the third stage, but that Donnie's somehow been able to retrofit a giant, like, anti-gravity engine to it. But also somehow foot soldiers all got one of their own. I don't know. Try not to ask too many questions. It's a video game based on a 90s cartoon. Gonna let these wait a little bit because there are more enemies coming in, and we'll do one of these. Lost a little bit of time from taking a hit, but otherwise that was basically what we wanted to set up. Get those out right as the girders come through. And we'll use the girders to our advantage as we have so many stage hazards to this point to take care of some of these enemies for us. You could argue this is the stage with the least going on, but honestly, with this song and with the aesthetics that it has, I feel like it still has a lot to offer. But as far as like speed tech, as far as different waves of enemies, this is probably one of the slower stages. It gives you a little bit of time to catch your breath. As you can see here, we're really just waiting for missiles to come across the screen. And now waiting for all of these to line up for us. Nice and easy. The stage is quite generous with the extra pizzas. Here is one little secret that I added that I make sure to do in all my runs. I don't know if it actually stays in the run on the whole, but again, like I mentioned earlier, that first patch to the game changed how enemies spawn in. So instead of having to spawn them as they drop them to the ground, the enemies technically all exist behind the blimps as soon as the blimps start like land in their position on the screen. So if you know exactly where that spawn point is, you can hit them from there and knock them out of the blimp early without having to wait for the animation where they drop down. So we do that here, and then just know where they get knocked out to save a little bit of time. Clear off that last wave, get our super up for the boss. And then a little mini game I like to play here is a lot of these bosses will basically pull you because they're expecting up to 6 players. Yeah, you can play this game with a total of 6 players in either local or online co-op. But basically what the game will do is it'll try to line all the players up in very specific places on the screen. So I like to try to line my character up in exactly the right place for where they will be. This is Wingnut. He's been made a little bit more obnoxious in recent patches because he does that kind of where he closes his wings and then tries to flap them at you. And if he successfully hits you with the first one, the odds of him doing what we call the Storm Eagle phase for my Mega Man X fans in the audience goes up drastically. If he hits you with that or just otherwise feels like it, he'll fly up off the screen and then he'll kind of come down at you at diagonal angles for kind of like the Rat King, about 5 to 10 seconds. So thankfully, we didn't have to see that either. New enemies, the Plunger foes. These are not the only gun-toting enemies in the game, technically, but positioning was a little off there. I would have liked to have used that parking meter on our plunger-bearing friends here, but that's all right. Yeah, so they have a 1 hit of super armor while they are in the process of firing their guns, I guess. Plunger darts? Muskets? They're technically muskets with plungers on the end. Don't ask me what the sensors were thinking. I mean, realistically, it's the gameplay designers. I don't think a design like that actually showed up in any of the cartoons, but it does seem like the kind of thing. Now we've got our Naginata wielding teal blue enemies. They have the same 4 health as average, but much like the sword soldiers, if they get a chance, they will block and have a very solid guard against you, at which point you either have to roll around behind them, try to jump over them and cross them up, something like that. Take our power pizza and do a nice little sweep around the screen. Don't have to worry about that screen at all. Got another flea type of enemy. These ones, the little golden fleas, will drop grenades on you. Not usually an issue. Like, I'm not gonna run directly into one, or even if I stick around, if I'm doing this charged attack, that gives your character super armor. So in cases where those fleas might be nearby, in a lot of cases I'll already be doing a charged attack, so I can just take the hit. Especially since I'm not on Gnarly, where things do double damage. I may not have mentioned that earlier, but yeah, that's the other difference of Gnarly. These black Psy soldiers, if you hit but don't kill them, they will jump away from you at an angle that is generally very awkward to deal with. We're going to take this pizza up here for safety. But yeah, so the Psy soldiers, there are a few ways, as you saw, for us to kind of follow up and jump along with them, but generally the angle at which they jump is meant to be as difficult for you to follow them as possible. So in cases where there's a couple of them and a lot of other enemies, we really want to take care of them either immediately or with a super, something that will do all of their health in a single attack, so we don't have to worry about them jumping away. Knock our enemies over here. Not quite how I wanted to set that up, but again, you get a chance to see just how wide that super attack can be. Yeah, I jumped too soon. His hitbox had not become active yet. Hoping to jump over the loose boardwalk plank, but if you ever play in co-op, count how many times you and your friends get hit by those planks when you count this level. If anybody, if any group of players finishes under 6 on your first playthrough, you're doing great. This is our good friend, not Paul Prudhomme, but no, Leatherhead. Love the Cajun accent as somebody from the south of the United States myself, but he is a bit of a nuisance for the fact that he has the lowest knockdown threshold in the game. He basically gets knocked down and into a state where you can't hit him further twice as fast as any other enemy. This last one's going to be aiming for me. So yeah, you saw I got the super. The The super didn't knock him down because he was busy doing an attack, but the first hit afterwards did, so I wasn't able to follow it up quite as fast as I would have liked. But that still went pretty clean. We got a couple of supers on him while he was hopping around. Thankfully, that's not a quote-unquote dead phase. You can keep doing damage. So we were able to make good advantage of that. All right, on into what I generally consider the start of the back half of the game. Technically, this is stage 10 out of 16, so we're more than halfway through in terms of levels, but the levels do get longer and more complex from here. They throw a lot more different types of enemies, some situations you haven't seen before, something like that, where the enemy is, those bikers do not have to be defeated at all, as you saw. So, if you are going for points, then by all means, but otherwise, not necessary. Mausers and boxes. Oh, we knocked that first one off the bike before the exclamation point even showed up. That's a nice change of pace. Most of my practice runs recently, I had been missing one of those the first time through, and I had to hit the second biker while taking care of the second wave of Mausers, which is more than you like to juggle at once, generally speaking. Technically, those bikers don't have to be defeated either, but the screen does scroll slightly faster if you do. So, always nice. Each of these giant Mauser mechs spits out 2 baby Mausers when defeated. I don't know if they're like powering it, controlling it, whatever the case may be, but thankfully none of them got too far away from us. Do a safety super here to have it ready for that Mauser mech. As you can see, the rising attack does do the 2 health that all the small Mausers have. I was able to bounce one against the corner there to get 2 hits for 1. Got our little moving platforms here. Just make sure to press against the wall in cases where enemies spawn in on the walls. And then just the ones where they spawn up in the stocking shelves up there. Wait for them to come towards us. We do like to have at least one of them down there. Excellent. These 2 should bounce out towards us. All right, 1 out of 2. That's fine. And we'll take care of the last enemy. And pop a squat to taunt while the moving walkway takes us where we're going. All right, missed the first one, but that's okay. That didn't go quite as cleanly as I'd like. Oh, left one behind. As if you notice the screen here from the beginning of the TMNT NES game, as Shredder is taunting you for having to rescue April O'Neil. Take this power pizza to clean things up. We do want to let that touch the ground as soon as possible, that mech, because the little Mausers can't spawn out from it until it hits the ground. You can roll right through those rockets as we are showing off there. Let everyone spawn here so we have time. We can hit everybody. 1 more super here. We'll run right out to the spot where the screen scrolls and get another super ready. Lucky jumps from those 2. Very good. Uh-oh. All right. Yeah, we actually might as well get caught by that to save time, because while those arms are extending, you can do damage to the mechs, but you cannot take them below 1 HP. So letting him throw us actually took less time and let us line the 2 up next to each other. This is the... well, technically, this is an ally of the Turtles. Metalhead has been reprogrammed by Mikey on at least 1 occasion to fight along with the Turtles, but in this case, today he is not on our side. But we can use some of his predilections. See if we can get a missile here in a location where there aren't Mausers. Because now they will serve as a body block, so now we have to wait the rest of this phase. If we get behind him when he's using those extendo arms, then it's just free damage. So that's what we like to see. Accidentally turned him around a little bit. Hey, you. There we are. That was an unusual series of jumps. He kind of ran a circle around us. All right. And as we'll see in this next cutscene, you'll see for just a second, Donnie's actually reprogramming him again to fight on our side. Unfortunately, Krang's legs got away from us. That one flea enemy managed to carry the whole thing away. So, time to run over to the Museum of Natural History to see why Krang's legs are going to the museum. That's a reasonable guess, Donnie. Shredder may very well be behind us. We'll have to wait and see. New enemy type, the Triceratons. Triceratons were a later day foe of the turtles in the cartoons, and they are a real nuisance here. They have the same 10 HP as any axe-wielding enemy does, but they also have the instant anti-air attack of those pike-wielding enemies. Basically, if they're not firing a gun, there's a high chance that if you jump into them, their horns, just on the front of their head there, it doesn't even need to look like an attack. They will just bounce you away. There's very little you can do to stop it, aside from not doing whatever it is you were going to do. These enemies put up their shields, and the last hit in a standard 4-hit combo does turn them around. There you go. There's that anti-air property I was talking about. The green soldiers typically prefer to stay at range more, whereas the orange ones will charge around. So we can generally use that to our advantage. See if we can get these two over here. Here we go. That lasted almost long enough to take care of everybody, so we'll take that. It's okay. Don't mind them staying in boxes for however long it took me to get here. They are technically all robots, so they do not consider that inhumane conditions. They're fine. The AC is on. They have their favorite song is playing. You do not need to worry about the conditions of the foot soldiers. But if you did worry, I appreciate it. Very empathetic of you. That was not quite how we meant to do that. That little museum standee should be considered a one-hit kill for most kinds of enemies there, and unfortunately we managed to sail it just past our Triceraton buddy. Set up with a super here. We are not going to take this infinite pizza if we can help it, although it is a not uncommon sight for the anti-air properties of the Triceraton's head to knock us into one. We'll just go ahead and do this, since all we really need to do here is knock them back into the portal to Dimension X. And Donnie's big circular super makes it a lot easier to do that without having to fight anybody. Again, because of the changes in this patch, we're going to be carrying the infinite pizza into this fight. So we don't actually have to fight Captain Zorax, one of our other few gun-wielding enemies, at all. As you can see there, if you hit an enemy the moment it touches the ground, like right as they're in that falling down animation, there is technically, for about 3 frames, also a valid hitbox as they land. So we make sure to get an extra super off then to double our damage, especially when we have infinite super meter like that. It's the kind of thing you can actually also do in story mode, because in story mode, if you look in the top left of your screen, the that bar that only goes to 1 here, that lets us do our supers. Too busy explaining to set up for this level. That's okay. You can actually continue to play the game skillfully, and it'll go up to 3 bars instead of just 1. They actually did change that in a more recent patch so that you can't taunt 3 times. Kind of an anti-stall mechanic, because in story mode co-op, especially if you were playing with like random players online, people would kind of just sit at the edge of a screen and taunt until they had all 3 super bars up. So what they let you do is they let you have a 1 super bar naturally, and then the other 2 you have to earn by attacks. If you want to start running this game yourself, or even just have like a fun casual playthrough, I would recommend the chill difficulty for your first time out, because the main thing that does, in addition to making enemies a little bit less aggressive... 3... Nah, I hit 1 down. That's okay. Got to see what the sword soldier does if you run into him. But yeah, the chill difficulty actually makes it so that if you have a partially filled ninja meter and you take a hit, that meter does not drain back out. Otherwise, any partially filled meter will drain back to the bottom of the current bar. So when we're playing on OK and Gnarly, we have to be very careful the order we attack enemies in, and to like not take hits at certain times. Basically, the safest time to take a hit is right after using a super move, or after you've finished charging a full meter. Not that you want to anyways, there's usually hard knockdown properties associated with it, but it wasn't ideal to hit both of those barrels. Yeah, you can see we hit the other barrel that wasn't even on screen, but that's okay. got a super charged up as the screen scrolled. We're going to go across the very bottom here because for whatever reason they made the bottom of that screen safe passage from those freezing canisters. So we'll take that. We'll take that with gratitude. Use the standing super here. The laser discs enemies, as I call them, because they are disc shaped and they fire lasers. No one has ever accused me of being particularly clever. I don't know that they have an actual name, so I just call them laser discs. But yeah, so those have to be flipped over, and each turtle and each turtle friend has a limited range of moves that actually do that flip property. Usually, rising and falling kicks will do it okay. And of course, supers will as well. So for Donnie, if we have a series of them come out at once, what we'll do is we'll do the standing super, because one hit of it will flip them over and a second hit will defeat them. They have 3 health once they're flipped over, and technically infinite before, I guess, but all right, having them not jump into each other isn't ideal, but we'll just do the standing. Again, we can show off the property of the spin. There we go. We'll do diving kicks or the elbow into everybody else. And these are very predictable spawns. If you don't let them crawl away from you, they'll spawn in the same place every time. So that screen was nice and easy. Baxter Stockman here, as you might remember from the very first stage of Turtles in Time, a little less creepy than he was in that incarnation. I think the proportions are a little less out there, and also his little handgun is not like flesh or pizza dough colored, both of which are kind of a little creepy. All right, now that he's gotten back across the screen and is on low health, he's going to start summoning Mousers and trying to get away. Oh no, with a single hit left. Shame on me. Yeah, this is a dead phase. So all we can do here is avoid the Mousers and avoid the laser guns, which technically we didn't. We should have been right about here for that to happen. Out of deference to my mistake, I won't even use the super. We'll just save that for later. That's okay. What is less okay is the fact that we've let Krang's entire body come back together. So that's probably going to be a problem later. They are now powering him up and using the rest of Baxter Stockman's equipment and teleporting him off to Dimension X, the shell of the Technodrome. All right. Technodrome about to introduce the enemy that will be our biggest obstacle for the entire rest of the run. The Stone Soldiers. Stone Soldiers have permanent armor, except for a few attacks like the elbow here. So basically, if they are running at you, they will not stop until they hit you, a wall. They also have the 10 health that most other bulky enemies have. Oh, that was not ideal. That's okay. See if we can pull off something a little cheeky. Yes. Get the both of them there. Oh. Gun popped that enemy up for me, so I couldn't super them both. That's okay. Get both of them down here. So we'll have a super ready for our next two. Ah, the homing property. I was just a little bit too far up from this one. Get a super here as this screen scrolls over. No, no, I won't. Oh, Donnie. We love you, but you need to get off those video games. There we go. That got the triangle lined up just right. Didn't get the magnetized property in towards any of those, so we were able to hit all 3 of them at once. Knock these 2 over. As soon as one of them is defeated, these 2 will jump in. Tried to do the same thing there. Tried to jump right in between the 2 of them, but it is a very particular position. See if we can get off a cheeky taunt while the screen scrolls. Yes, we can. And the electricity actually did us a favor by popping one of these Psy Soldiers right up towards us. Mazel tov. Got the taunt off before we get onto our obligatory second elevator for the game. a hallmark of 80s and 90s beat 'em ups. See if we get any assists from the ceiling tiles. Not this go round, but that's okay. Gotta pop up right into another. Nice. See if we can build another bit of super naturally. Nope, not quite in time. That's okay. Let's take care of these two the old-fashioned way. Hello, Andrew Mack. Hope you are enjoying Pixel Perfect Marathons. My name is ateatree, and I am running TMNT Shredder's Revenge. Onto the mini-boss, the only stage with a mini-boss, General Trag, the leader of the Granite Grunts, the infantry division of the Stone Soldiers. Right into the RPG. Less than ideal. I'm sure my Metal Gear Solid running friends would not approve of running directly into an RPG. That does not save time, to be sure. Again, we get it off a little cheeky taunt before we go on to the next screen. Very good. We're going to take this as far over to the left as we can to get as many hits on that Granite Grunt, on that Stone Soldier as we can. That screen went nice and easy. This one less so. That's all right. All right. Have to wait for some of them to jump in. A little messy, but we made it work. Came out of here with most of a super meter. Do a little bit of extra hitting, and then we'll just turn on the juice. Clean up the rest of the screen for us. Very nice. Let these two run in while we stand directly between them. Nope. There we are. Come back across. Let both of our sword friends come in, because we got a power pizza here. And the more enemies that are already spawned in, the more we can hit at once with our power pizza. One hit short. That'll do. Oh no, Shredder! Nope, it's just Great Value Shredder, aka Chrome Dome. Chrome Dome is very much like the Super Shredder fights from some of the early Turtles arcade games. You cannot attack him while he's like this roaming around. And he also has this Mode 7 phase where he punches at you. Once you've knocked him out of that by throwing somebody at him, then you can attack him. Try to avoid as many missiles as we can, at least one that might knock us down while we're waiting to throw enemies at him. And nice and clean. Cannot complain about a 2-cycle. Unfortunately, as we noticed, neither Krang nor Shredder was home at the Technodrome, so it is time to keep trekking across Dimension X and look for some other friends and foes along the way. This is technically our last little auto-scroller. It is only the opening of this level, but if you are playing this in co-op, I also encourage you to play along with your friends. Just come to the very front of the screen here and see who can get hit by the least asteroids. If you want to be extra cheeky about it, don't use the double jump. As you can see, I have a lot of practice with that. Getting a little bit of bonus time in before we come off to our next screen here. Very nice of them. If you took any damage on this last screen, there is, or if you take any damage here, like I just did, because I forgot when those three hop out. There is technically a pizza hiding right behind that plant. Tried to get the elbows out for those two. That's okay. Come over here. Intercept that one before he jumps. Let the other three do their jumpy thing. About to see one of the very last new enemies for the game. The pizza monsters. They are monsters. They are made of pizza. I have never been afraid of pizza before. Thankfully, I'm not lactose intolerant, but as far as pizza goes, this is about as afraid of pizza as I get. Unfortunately, I don't think we've left ourselves time to get the taunt off. Yeah, we're gonna have to do the standing again. Ideally, you want to use the diving super because that does all 10 of their health, as you saw. The good thing there is the pizza monsters can technically desync as far as when they spawn onto the screen, so we didn't see that happen, but not quite as clean as we might have liked. Leave this stalagmite alone because that hides an infinite pizza, which we can use to summarily dispatch this entire screen. And ideally, with just a little bit saved over. There we go. Nice. Oh, got a few less hits on him than I thought. Should have a super saved up here. Nice. Get a couple of bonus hits on that one. Yeah, that's fine. We'll use this here because over at the very top, we'll be above this dash range. Wait for him to pop out. Ideally, we want to do a 2 and 2. Do not run after us, my friend. Thank you. Yeah, much like the green Triceratons, the gray stone soldiers are not very likely to run after you. But the further away from them you are, the more it is a distinct possibility. So we try to stay at a very medium range to them. Do a couple of taps here, so these two run out at the same time, and we can hit them both with the same super. We're just going to take this one safe. You see those little laser turrets pop out. Ideally, what you want to do is run out and take these folks out while the lasers are still firing, but taking care of one of them makes both that screen and this one a little safer. Go ahead and use a super, grab pizza, and go ahead for our boss taunt. Loses a little less time than getting knocked down by anything, so we'll take that for safety. This is Slash, also an anti-hero and sometimes friend of the Turtles. Also one of the only bosses in the game who does not have any knockdown properties, so as often as you can get hits in on him, he is available to be knocked around. Unfortunately, he does also have these two phases. Wow, I have not rolled through him before. Not as I can recall, anyway. Yeah, so he has the spin slash, kind of similar to some of your supers. He also has the rock throw. If you are hit by that boulder, that'll knock you around. Not quite as clean as I would have liked. Would have liked to have built up a couple of supers, but worked well enough. You got to see what he can do anyway. Unlike some of the other bosses, he got to do basically his entire moveset. The only move he didn't show us, because we weren't standing quite in the right space relative to him, is he will sometimes try to grab you and throw you like some of the other enemies can do. The Rat King actually is one of the other enemies who has that grab. Rat King will run at you, and if he hits you, he will grab you as he's running around. So thankfully, we didn't see that from either enemy. So this is Outworld Strangeoids. This is the final exam, essentially. You will see every enemy type in the game. You will see a lot of different combinations of enemies at different patterns to test. Make sure, hey, can you handle having things thrown at you while other enemies sweep the ground? With attacks that are always active. How about enemies that run around a lot, along with enemies that spawn other enemies? Alright, as you saw, while the arms are out, they can be damaged, but they cannot be defeated. Would have liked to use that super just a teensy bit later, so I could actually defeat the spawns from it, instead of just the mech. That's okay. Do a little knockdown, build a little super, and then bring everyone in. 4 flies on each side. Let those spikes come up and down. Ah ha ha. Close. Try not to walk onto any spike pits if we can help it, because every one of those spikes is an individual hitbox, as you and also many of our enemies can see. They will hurt them, they will hurt us. They will continue to cycle around as I slowly chase that one Psy soldier around the stage. But yeah, the nice thing about the way the spikes work as far as interacting with enemies is one of the main enemies you'll see while we have the spike pits active is the stone soldiers. And since stone soldiers don't suffer knockdown except in very specific conditions, it is possible for them to be tagged by multiple rows of spikes at once and take several damage at a time. So if we can do that, that would be a nice little set of bonus damage for us. Okay, we'll roll back so we can let both of them do their thing. Aha, I was standing on the edge of that spike. That's okay, we got 2 of them on top of each other here. And the third one even rolled in to say hi. Howdy, friend. Alright, that was less friendly. Only got 1 knockdown. Alright, we'll make that work. You don't need that pizza, that's just fine. There we go. Use a little stun. That pizza monster did not hop out where I was expecting him to at all. I should have just ignored him and waited for the... I don't know, are those experiment gauges? They're basically the same as the traffic meters from the early stages, but I don't think there are traffic meters in a secret underground lab. That's a bit of a weird touch even for the foot soldiers. I was hoping to catch him in that dash, but that is all right. Just a few more screens left. Plan to have a super up as we leave this screen. Use it here to solve the first half of this screen. Get all the spawns. Get another one up. Very nice. Now this is another screen where we want to leave a power up alone. Almost ran right into it. There we go. Thankfully, we don't have to worry too much since we have that big magnetic super. And then we will ride this super. This is the only case where you can carry a power pizza into a boss. And you'll see what that does in just a second. Krang has a higher than average health pool, but it's not gonna matter. Spin to win, baby. Spin to win. Again, something that was just enabled by the most recent patch. So if you've seen this run before, you probably haven't seen that happen. Unfortunately, we seem to have fallen for a diversion. He has a surprise for us. Wonder what that could be. Of course. Time for our last song with lyrics. You may not get to listen to too many of them if I do it right, but great song. Right. Spacing here is a little bit different. Yeah, those slower normals. That's okay. Yeah, basically just had to send that one. I was technically only in range of 2 of the 3 Shredder clones, but did win the battle there and hit the real one. Yeah, sorry, no second verse on that song for us this go around, but of course, Shredder can never be defeated in a single fight. What kind of Turtles arcade game would it be if you went down and didn't get back up? Huh, the Statue of Liberty. I wonder what that's about. Oh, I don't like that. Well, everyone, please rise and salute for the Foot Clan National Anthem. The Statue of Tyranny. Ghostbusters 2, eat your heart out. This boss has a couple of different attacks, which again, as of more recent patches, it actually uses more dynamically. We did avoid all of the main attacks so far, which is nice. There is a little patch of ground that I am standing on that actually allows us to completely avoid that ground slam, so we want to see that just about as often as we can. We're also grateful that that top fist remains available for us to hit while it is using the eye laser attack. Continues to have an active hitbox until right about there. So very close. Was hoping that would finish it off. You know what? We're just going to leave these foot soldiers alive. It's fine. They can watch as we defeat the Statue of Tyranny. Oh, I guess he didn't feel like sticking around. All right, a little messy, took more damage than we meant to, so we might actually take our 1 death of the run on the final boss here. Gonna seek in one more taunt. I wonder who the final boss could be. At Big Apple, 3 a.m. That seems about right. But wait, he's got a can of mutagen! Ladies and gentlemen, friends of all kinds, It's Kevin Nash. That's also a TMNT movie reference. Kevin Nash played Super Shredder in one of the films. Again, another little change from more recent patches. He has become a lot more dynamic. Oh no, I did that first super too early. It did not do any damage. Shame on me. But yeah, this little flame jet attack comes out at varying angles now, whereas it didn't used to. You kind of just stand in place. Definitely won't do this super too early. That's okay. Would be down at the halfway point if we had gotten our first super off for 10 more damage, but we will make it work. He can do this dash up to 3 times before he becomes vulnerable, so yeah, the more times he tends to do it, the more often you'll see a regression to the mean. We got some very friendly overloads earlier, so this is much more in line with what we were expecting. See if we can get this off before these fireballs come out. Now, the fireballs have actually also been sped up since the early patches to make this part of the fight an actual danger. Shouldn't need another super here, so we're not going to worry about that. Nice. A very friendly setup. Time is coming up, and that is time. I hope you have enjoyed Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Shredder's Revenge, if not for the slightly less than flawless gameplay, but for the amazing sights and sounds the game has to offer. New York can rest easy once more now that Lady Liberty has been restored to her former gleaming glory. I, Vernon Fenwick, who was not at all scared, can confirm that Shredder has been defeated by the city's protectors, the Green Guardians of Good, the Web Warriors themselves, the Punk Frogs. Sorry, Turtles. Maybe next time. If you do want to learn to run this game yourself, feel free to head over to the speedrun.com page and come into the Turtles RTA Discord. There are people running every game in the series, everything from the original arcade game to the GBA quadrilogy of games. Yeah, the Turtles games, much like the Turtles franchise itself, has gone through some very weird periods in time. The less we talk about the Platinum Games entry that wasn't very good, probably the better. But yeah, there's people running everything. There are still people out there routing this game. We are looking forward to the Dimension Shell Shock DLC, which will introduce another new character, Usagi Yojimbo, from the a separate but related comic series to the Turtles. So there'll be new characters. There'll probably be new tech. Feel free to stop by. Again, that's the TMNT RTA Discord. My name is ateatree. I don't stream terribly often. You're actually more likely to catch me around marathons hosting. But if you'd like to drop me a follow, you can do that at twitch.tv/ateatree. And if things line up, you will actually see me streaming video games sometimes. Otherwise, you can catch me around in marathons. I host, I produce, I do a little bit of everything. You're more likely to see me in Twitch chat just hanging out, as I will be after this run. Thank you so much, everyone. I hope you had a good time, and I hope the rest of your Sunday is pixel perfect. Peace.
All right. Thank you, T3, for the Punk Frogs run. Sorry, the Mutant Ninja Turtle run.
I see what you did there.
Yeah, that was a great run. But yeah, this is the end of my hosting block, so I'll have to say goodbye. But we still have more exciting runs coming up, and Legicha will be your host for next couple of runs after the break coming up. Immediately after the break, we will have Grand Theft Auto Vice City run. It will be the any percent no SSU, which I believe stands for script stack underflow, which skips like the majority of the game. But this run will be the no SSU category, so you'll be seeing most of the game. So don't worry. So yeah, stay tuned and make sure to tune back in after the intermission.